Hi, and welcome to White Coats Foundation, Your Voice, Your Story webinar. Sometimes it's difficult to put in feelings into words. They say that a picture paints 1,000 words, and in 2021, we invited people to express their voice by creating a picture, a painting, a symbol, or sending us in a photo that represents what clinical trials mean to them. We welcomed entries from patients, family members, healthcare professionals, and industry professionals. Stories are what connect us as humans, and aside from this initiative being a fun opportunity to get creative, Your Voice, Your Story may help to give someone else a voice and inspire them to learn more or ask about clinical trials and how they might benefit them or someone they know. White Coats Foundation selected storytellers for a further presentation at the Your Voice, Your Story public webinar held on International Clinical Trials Day, 20th of May this year. I'm now handing over to Michelle, who facilitated the webinar, and enjoy.
So for those who don't know me, my name is Michelle DeVito Smith, and I will be co-hosting this event with Michelle Ouellette. And together this morning, we're the M&M team. Now for Michelle, she joins us in her evening. She just lives outside of Washington, DC. So a warm welcome and thank you to Michelle. So thanks. So I joined the White Coats Foundation last September as the head of patient experience and stakeholder engagement. Clinical trials and doing more for patients are my two passions, and it is an absolute honour to work alongside the co-founders, Christine Zarin and Fiona Cameron, in creating awareness in our community through the various channels and events like this one. Now over to Michelle. Michelle, please introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Michelle Ouellette. I lead advocacy and community outreach initiatives for Syneos Health. We're a research company and we aim to shorten the distance from lab to life. So specifically in my role, I look to establish relationships between sponsors and advocates, and I have the goal of encouraging patients to take a very proactive role in clinical research for themselves and others. I became involved with the White Coats when the foundation was a finalist in our Inspiring Hope Ideathon with SysGrid. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. I would now like to acknowledge our wonderful co-founders who work tirelessly to find new ways of engaging our community about the importance of clinical trials. Welcome to Christine and Fiona. Christine, could you please take us through an overview of the White Coats Foundation?
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for that kind introduction, and a very warm welcome to everybody that's joining us here this morning. It is, of course, International Clinical Trials Day, as Michelle pointed out, and there's lots of activities and events running throughout the morning and this afternoon. So we're very, very grateful that you've all made time to spend your morning with us for this webinar here today. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Christine Zarin, one of the co-founders of the White Coats Foundation, alongside with my colleague Fiona Cameron, who's on screen, hopefully waving. Hi, Fiona. And my background's in nursing. I've spent around almost 30 years working in healthcare. The majority of my career has been spent working in clinical trials research in a variety of roles. The White Coats Foundation was established in recognition of the need to raise awareness around the role of clinical trials in advancing medical science and healthcare. We want people to ensure that they understand how clinical trials might potentially play a role in the management of their healthcare. And we have a very strong emphasis on the role of patients as partners in the discovery of better health. And I forgot to point out that we are a not-for-profit DGR registered charity. Our awareness initiatives are aimed at targeting the general public, patients and carers, the healthcare professional community, because we acknowledge that there are knowledge deficits that exist within each of these communities. And our awareness initiatives align with 5 core arms of the foundation, which are designed to help us meet our charitable purpose. And these arms include a research arm, an education arm, a merchandise arm, a fundraising arm, and an events arm. And I'll just give you a very brief overview of each of those arms. So with our research arm, the activities in this arm are designed to provide an evidence base, or we seek to quantify or qualify people's perception, value, experience, and level of understanding of clinical trials, so that we can build messages and communication programs that resonate or target or resonate with each of our target audiences. With our education arm, we aim to provide knowledge and resources that promote awareness around clinical trials and that can help improve people's level of understanding of clinical trials. We provide information on our website. And I also just want to flag that on the 2nd of June, we will be launching a new video series called Behind the White Coat, which goes behind the scenes of drug discovery and gets up close and personal with the people and the different processes involved in taking a new intervention from basically lab bench to bedside. So we're really excited about launching that. And the first series focuses on the role of scientists in that discovery process. So that's one to stay tuned for. With our merchandise arm, we believe that symbolism aids awareness, and we've developed products that can be used as promotional tools out in the community to help raise awareness. Some of you may be familiar with our Keep Cups, which is one of the first items in our product line that we released. And these are currently being used by patients and healthcare professionals to share their clinical trial story in the community. If you want to learn more about the Keep Cup initiative, you can visit our website. There's lots of information on the website. And very soon, we're also excited, we're going to be launching the Keep Cups. They'll be available for purchase online via our website. So that's also something to stay tuned for. With our fundraising arm, we aim to support early research and new discoveries through our fundraising and donation programs. And we also aim to take the public on a journey with us from fundraising to discovery by tracking and reporting on the outcomes of the research projects we support. And the purpose of that is we want people to become more familiar and have a better understanding of how we go from from concept to creation of an intervention that has health impact for patients. And this might not always necessarily be a drug. It could be a device or a behavioural therapy or cognitive intervention. And so that's also part of what we aim to emphasise through the types of projects we support in our fundraising arm. And our events arm, of course, aims to bring all stakeholders together to exchange information, share experiences, so that we can all learn and develop our understanding of clinical trials. And Your Voice, Your Story today is an example of one of those events where we're coming together to have a conversation about clinical trials and share experiences. And I really hope that you all enjoy and learn from the very genuine and special exchanges that will be taking place this morning. So thank you very much for joining us. Sit back, relax. Hope you've all got a coffee in hand. I know I'm looking forward to learning more about each of the submissions. And if you've got any questions about the foundation and what we do, or you'd like to become involved, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us after today. So thank you, and back over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Christine. Next slide, please, Fiona. So now we come into, just back up, Fiona, one back. Thank you. Fiona's doing a great job in controlling our slides for us after a little minor hiccup this morning. So thanks, Fiona. So your voice, your story. When we think about clinical trials, these words, clinical trials, may mean different things to different people. They may evoke an emotion, an experience, confusion, or even a memory. Words don't come easy to some of us, and sometimes it's difficult to put feelings into words. I mean, how many times do we use emojis these days in text messages, emails? They're everywhere to describe an emotion and how we feel instead of using words. They say a picture can tell 1,000 words, so this is why we have invited you, our community, to express your voice, your story, by sending us an image or symbol that represents what clinical trials mean to you. We have encouraged all voices to be heard from the community, including those who may not even be aware of clinical trials and may see them as a big question mark or a black hole. We have been absolutely thrilled with the response of the wonderful entries, some very creative responses, lots of insights, lots of thoughts, all being underpinned by clinical trials and what clinical trials mean to our community. We've had entries from patients, from carers, from allied organisations, from friends, from healthcare professionals and biopharmaceutical industry professionals, each with a message where the common denominator is clinical trials. So after a very arduous task of selecting 4 entries to showcase today, I'm privileged to introduce our storytellers. So I'll introduce our storytellers one by one, and then we will launch into each of their stories. So first of all, Melinda Cruz. Hi, Melinda. How are you? So a little bit about Melinda. Melinda is the mother of 3 babies born premature and the founder of Miracle Babies Foundation, Australia's largest and leading neonatal consumer group. Melinda has a Bachelor of Science in Genetics from the University of New South Wales. In 2012, she was appointed as an Honorary Research Associate at the NHMRC Clinical Trials Centre and was the first parent to be an Associate Investigator on an NHMRC neonatal trial called the LIFT trial. As of February 2019, she is in fact a Chief Investigator on the funded MRFF wheat trial, and wheat standing for withholding or continuing enteral feeds around transfusion. In 2019, Melinda won the inaugural ACTA Consumer Involvement Award for her involvement in obtaining waiver of consent in a neonatal trial. Welcome, Melinda. Then we have Lee Hunt joining us. Hi, Lee. Lee was diagnosed with grade 3 breast cancer in 2005. Following surgery, she undertook an 18-month therapy program, but suffered a recurrence 13 years later. She will share more about her story later. Following a 40-year career in education, she joined Cancer Voices on the executive team, leading the consumers involved in research programs. Lee is the consumer member of the Faculty of Radiation Oncology for the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Radiologists and the Targeting Cancer Management Committee. She supports various RANZCR college committees by ensuring documents are consumer-friendly and reflecting the ongoing needs of cancer patients. She is a member of the Radiation Oncology Roundtable that meets with the Department of Health. Welcome, Lee. Thanks for joining us. Now over to Jackie Everett. Hi, Jackie. Jackie has a long history in the medical research and pharmaceutical industry. Since 2000, Jackie has worked with regulatory ethics governance requirements in different regions from Southeast Asia, New Zealand, India, UK, and the US. Prior to established ClinConsult, Jackie led international clinical trials for the world's leading pharmaceutical companies and clinical research organisations before moving into Australia's academic research sector, where her skills have expanded into clinical governance and directing research programs for not-for-profit clients from inception. Jackie's experience with a variety of clients has allowed her to have real-world understanding of the importance of carefully balancing clinical trial results with regulatory ethics and governance compliance requirements. Jackie is currently Director of National Trials for the Australian Parkinson's Mission. Welcome, Jackie. And last but not least, Natalie Booth. Natalie has been living with epilepsy from the age of 12. At a very low point in her young life, Natalie joined a clinical trial where she was the first patient worldwide to receive a new formulation of an epilepsy treatment. Her brave and never give up attitude is truly an inspiration, and we look forward to hearing more of your story later, Natalie. So welcome everyone, welcome to our storytellers. And now over to you, Melinda, if you unmute yourself.
Yep.
And Fiona, if you could progress the slide.
Thank you so much for having me. I was watching Jackie, your cat, walk across the screen and I've got my poodle wandering around, so I'm just hoping he'll be quiet. It's how we do this nowadays, isn't it?
Right. So Melinda, tell us about your story.
Yes, absolutely. I can't see it up on the screen, but I do have a copy of it here. So I think from the image that I really wanted to share a little bit about the journey and the cycle, I guess, that we've taken not only as an organisation, but even myself personally. So as you mentioned, mum of 3 boys, but there it is, all born premature. The top photo really that shows when my 3rd son was in the NICU. My first one was born at 34 weeks. He spent nearly 3 weeks in hospital. Dylan, who's closest to me, he was born at 27 weeks and spent 9 weeks in the NICU. And it was a very, very big, long journey with us. And this photo really represents for me, you know, I was on 14 weeks bed rest before I had Jasper. And this is the first time and how his brothers got to meet him. So from that journey and really feeling very isolated and very alone, and, you know, we started the foundation in 2005. There was not a lot of access to information, particularly Australian-based information. And that was where the idea of the foundation came about. Didn't foresee at the time that it would be as big as it is today. I thought it was going to be a small support group just based at Liverpool Hospital where the boys were born. But the foresight of, you know, the head of the unit at the time really, you know, he really grabbed it. And one of the things that he really said to me was, you know, medically and physically we can do what we can for the babies really well. But if we don't look after the emotional stability in the family we're sending them home to, we're only doing half our job. So he really appreciated how much, you know, looking after the parents and their journey, making sure their, you know, anxiety, their confidence, all of that was looked after was going to be really important. So we started the foundation, like I said, in 2005. A lot of our focus at the time was all parent support programs and looking after for a family from a threatened pregnancy, their time in hospital and once they went home. So we did that for quite a number of years. And then in 2012, I received a phone call from the professor that you can see, William Tardo-Morty, who had received my number from the head of the unit. And he wanted to talk to me about research. And at the time, it wasn't really something that we had looked into or that we were going to focus on. And I remember one of the very first questions I asked him was, why do you need us? I thought, you know, that was all kind of taken care of. Why do you need the parents? And the things that stuck out for me that he said was, one, that uptake into neonatal trials is really low, which I agreed with because I said, you know, I've been through it. It's quite scary to have to say yes to your baby being into a trial. So I understood why that was. But a result of that meant that some trials couldn't get completed or that they were taking way too long to be able to get the results to be put into practice. And that was putting babies' lives at risk. So that was quite scary. And at the time, it was also brought to my attention that was part of NHMRC policy in their model framework back in 2004 that, you know, to encourage consumers to be involved on the outset for neonatal trials. So this hadn't happened in our space at all. You know, and like I said, it was now 2012. I was then invited as an associate investigator on a neonatal trial, which is the first time a parent was invited in Australia, which was absolutely amazing. As a result of that, and it was one of, we don't know if it was the first in the world, but it was pretty much up there. And the top photo in the right-hand corner is my invitation to the Vermont Oxford Network Congress, which is over in Chicago. 900 NICUs represented, 1,200 delegates, lots of speakers across 4 days. Only 2 parents were represented in the entire conference, which was quite shocking. One was there to give her story, and the other one was me, and I spoke about our involvement in research. And I think I really got a big gauge on how important it was, and also, you know, how receptive they were. And I think that was part of, you know, one of the things that created a successful partnership. So that followed on, and you explained that in the introduction of other research trials that we were then invited onto, and I was as well. It did lead to, so that the photo at the bottom is us winning, and that was our third award in 3 years, which is absolutely amazing for our work and our partnership on neonatal trials. That trial in particular was, you know, as a result of being able to gain waiver of consent, which is the first time that's happened on a neonatal trial for families, which, you know, part of that was me having to present at a ethics meeting, which was quite scary as a parent to walk into one of those meetings and really share our journey and why it was important to us. But, you know, being able to alleviate that fear and the burden of parents in emergency situations, and still have those babies be part of the trial, which was really important. So that keeps continuing. My work now within the foundation is all about advocacy and all about research and building our team. So that's our head office team, but really being able to help families and help gain all those consumer reps. And some of the things that we do is, it can be as simple as looking over education brochures and flyers for trials, being part of focus groups, answering survey questions. And what we see is our role is not only creating, you know, I guess replications of me in terms of a bigger pool for them to select from, but also that, you know, we want to be able to empower parents and educate them. And we would like to eventually get to the point where we're having parents, so that, you know, understanding how important trials are, that when they go into a hospital, one of the first questions that they're actually asking is, are there any trials that my baby can join? And I think one of the reasons that we've had so much success is that from both the clinical teams and the researchers, you know, the whole process of them actually coming to us and being really open to the process and wanting to understand what we've gone through, and actually valuing and putting importance on our lived experience and what that can mean for trials. So it's been an absolutely incredible journey, and to be able to make that difference and know that, you know, what I went through with my children can impact other families is absolutely incredible and humbling.
Thank you, Melinda. What an amazing story, and thank you for sharing that with our community today. Look, I think that you are really a trailblazer in terms of leading the way for other areas of research, other therapeutic areas. Your expertise is neonatal research, but the fact that, you know, when you tell your story, you've actually, as a parent, as a consumer, partnered with researchers and worked collaboratively, I think is really important. And I know a lot of people are trying to do that and get better at that, but you've already been there, done that, and building on that. So I think that's, you know, a fantastic way to start.
I think one of the things, just building on that, is that there is no limits. Like, I know when a paper is going to be published that I've been asked to co-author or being on a trial, like, I'll even show my kids, everybody there has a title, whether it's doctor, associate professor, and then it's just Melinda Cruz. But I say to my kids, never underestimate that you can have impact, that you can, you know, and have a seat at the table. And I think that's been amazing for us, that as parents we are valued and being brought in and part of that conversation and setting those agendas now.
Yeah, and you've been very brave to do that. Like, even be in front of an ethics committee to gain, you know, their approval for the waiver consent, or to waive consent, and have an opt-out option, you know, rather than an opt-in. Again, that's something that's really important for consideration in other areas of research. Well done for that. I just think that's amazing. And also the fact that we need to think about the efforts of even you being a chief investigator, as a parent, as a consumer. Come on, everybody, let's think about, we can do, you know, we can improve the way that we do run clinical trials. To have you've been there as a participant, as a parent with your baby in a trial, And then on the other side, as a chief investigator, really supporting that research, I think is something that we really need to think about and leverage for future clinical trials. So
Absolutely.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I think you're a great role model, Melinda, for what can be achieved in other therapeutic areas. And I love that your image says, are there any trials my baby can join? Because my nirvana is that, you know, we get everybody asking that question in all areas of healthcare. Are there any clinical trials I can join?
Mm-hmm.
Great tagline, I think.
Thank you. It is. It's all about even working within the units or the hospitals about transparency. You know, I remember walking to Liverpool Hospital and they've got, you know, outside a massive sign, they're attached to the New South Wales University, and it says, you know, this is a teaching environment. And I took a photo of it and it said, why doesn't it also say research environment? Like, we need to start having it as part of the normal language, normal conversation. It needs to be embedded into clinical practice. We pace those halls, or, you know, 9 weeks with Dylan, I was in hospital walking up and down those halls all the time. Some of the walls are empty, some of them have, you know, pretty pictures or things like that, but why aren't there advertise what research has got going on? You know, when I'm staring at something, I can have a read and see what it is. It's just having that constant exposure so that when you are asked, it's not something that's frightening, scary and unknown. It just becomes part of the whole normal practice.
Yeah, and increasing clinical trial literacy within the community.
Absolutely.
Just in general, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thanks, Melinda. Michelle, over to you. Any questions that have come through from our virtual table audience?
No questions so far, but I welcome everybody to submit questions. One question that I do have for Melinda is, what do you think are some of the best ways to share about clinical research opportunities, you know, with especially parents and caregivers where it could be a little bit more sensitive? What are some of the ways that you do or have successfully seen others?
Yeah, so we're very, very fortunate. We've got a big community. Last year, we actually, on World Prematurity Day, we launched what we now call our Nurture Network. So these are parents who are actively interested in wanting to learn more about research. So really building that data set. But otherwise, we definitely use the opportunity of social media. When we first started the foundation, it didn't exist. Which is crazy to think about, but being able to connect with people that way. And one of the things when we share research opportunities or surveys or different things that they can be involved in, when you can see other people involved in it, it just builds that engagement. And, you know, we might advertise or, you know, promote a trial, and then someone will pop in and say, oh, my baby's in that, my baby's in that. And then it just builds this kind of community. So we definitely use our networks and our social media, and then also within the units, being able to support the families that are in there.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Great question. Okay, we are now going to move on to share Lee Hunt's story. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me today and inviting me to present something about what it means to me to be part of a clinical trial. So my story is that in 2005, I was diagnosed with a grade 3 cancer, which means that it's a much more aggressive cancer. And at that stage, the known therapies were chemotherapy, surgery, chemotherapy, and then radiation therapy. But unfortunately, people were having very early recurrence from this particular type of cancer. So I was asked by my oncologist, would I like to go on to a third targeted drug following those other treatments, which was out of clinical trial, but still not on the PBS in Australia. So I said, yes, I would, and went through the 12 months of therapy of that targeted drug because it gave me a much greater chance of having a longer cancer-free period. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of side effects from my treatments because being an aggressive cancer, I had to have aggressive treatment. So I now have had to live with looking after those actual side effects too. But the targeted drug gave me a much longer period of time to be able to, have virtually a normal life. Unfortunately, after 13 years, I had a cancer recurrence and I had to have major surgery. And so far, I'm doing really well. So there's always something else around the corner, because even with that targeted drug coming through clinical trials, there's more versions of it. So if you have recurrence, some people need to go back onto a different version of it. So I'm extremely grateful for all those people who have been involved in clinical trials as the actual patient or consumer, because their input and being able to say, I went through that clinical trial, has given everybody else that comes after them a great chance to have a much longer and healthier life. After a period of time and closer to my retirement, I was approached by the chair of Cancer Voices if I'd like to join the executive, and in particular take over a program called Consumers Involved in Research. And that came about through a collaboration between Cancer Voices and Cancer Council New South Wales. And this is where the consumers are matched to research projects. So the training's undertaken by Cancer Council, and then after the training to be able to participate, Cancer Voices matches consumers to research projects. And the exciting thing for me is that I've also been an associate investigator on research projects through this role that I've taken on, which is very rewarding because researchers are now seeing how important the input is from the patient or the consumer. It's no use having research for the sake of research. It's got to really make a difference to the patient. And working through the research project, thinking, how can I adapt this? How can this be translated to benefit people? It's such a powerful thing that the consumer can bring to the research project. And fortunately, several of the projects I've been matched to have gained funding through either NHMRC or Cancer Australia or Cancer Council New South Wales. And that's enabled the research to proceed through and then on to clinical trials. And it's very rewarding for myself to see the input that I've given to research projects come to that state of clinical trial and then be marketed. And it's a very long road. You start at one state, the initial idea, and to get through to where it's actually there in the clinic takes many, many years and a lot of money and a lot of time from so many people. So I think that for me, clinical trials are a second chance. It gave me a much longer cancer-free period of time. And I know that without being involved in a clinical trial, my life would be very different to what it is today.
Thank you, Lee. That's a wonderful, wonderful story. And thank you for sharing your voice. It's exactly what you say. Research is dynamic in whatever therapeutic area the research is going on in, especially cancer. And it's something that I do. I have personal experience at the moment. I'm a virtual carer for my mother, and it's something that keeps her positive and keeps her, allows her to keep those punching gloves on, those boxing gloves, to know that tomorrow there may be a new medicine in development in clinical trials that may benefit her. And I guess this is something that you strongly believe in, and you have experienced yourself. So, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I always say to people that, because unfortunately I have had friends and friends of friends that have had, stage 4 cancer. And I say, have you looked into seeing if there's a clinical trial? And it's very important that there is a service out there that alerts all clinicians to the ability for a patient to enter a clinical trial, because you have nothing to lose. And there may be something out there that's just going to be exactly right for your type of cancer that will give you a better quality of life and many more years.
That's very right, Lee. There needs to be more done about raising awareness of the trials and also products that are in access programs, making them more transparent to the specialists and also to the patients so that they are informed of all their options. I think that's what we need today. They need to be informed of options to make informed decisions about their treatment care plans. So that's wonderful. I really like, you know, that your story is very patient-centric, and you know, in our world today, we talk a lot about patient centricity and putting the patient at the heart of research. You have exemplified that through your story. You are also a researcher, just like Melinda, on the other side, really advocating for the patient, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So Lee, keep doing what you're doing. And similarly with Melinda, you know, we need to continue the conversation and we need to continue lobbying to have more representation in our research projects from consumers.
Yeah, Lee, I just want to quickly echo Michelle's comments about, I love how your journey took you into the path of being a consumer researcher and having input into research in that way. And I was just interested to learn about the training program you referred to through Cancer Council, and how Cancer Voices actually has a matching program, because I think a lot of consumers out there that want to become involved in research prioritization and contribute to things like protocol design, but they don't know how to go about doing that. So I think it was really valuable that you mentioned that. I'd like to see a matching program for consumers who might be interested in participating in research in other therapeutic areas as well. I don't know if anyone who's on the webinar today knows of any other matching programs that exist, but I'd be very keen to learn. And if you know, please share in the chat function.
Thanks, Christine. No questions?
Lee, what do you think was most helpful to you in deciding between the options available to you and deciding on a clinical trial?
Yeah, when my cancer recurrence is a really good example of something that I was privileged to be able to do. So I've had very aggressive surgery because, unfortunately, when you have a recurrence, you know, they're talking about maybe doing things a different way to make, you know, to try to reduce the chance of another recurrence. So I had the option of various types of surgery, one being only in Australia for the last 4 years. It had been more prevalent in the United States, but not many surgeons are doing it in Australia. And I said to my medical or my surgical oncologist, look, I'm just happy to do whatever you say. He said, no, I insist you get a second opinion. And I went off to this plastic surgeon for his technique. And so then they both gave me the details and I was left then to make the decision. And I work with researchers at New South Wales Uni in the Big Data Centre, and they were fantastic. They gave me the results of research that had been undertaken and about patient satisfaction from the various procedures. So I made my choice based on what that research happening in the United States on satisfaction and outcomes. And so it was a very expensive option, but I'm extremely happy with my outcome.
Thanks, Michelle. Great question. And thank you, Lee, for sharing your story. Okay, so now we will move to the next slide, please, Fiona. We'll move to Jackie Everett. Jackie, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So firstly, I just wanted to thank the two speakers that came before me. It's amazing to hear from patients, especially in regards to clinical trials. So thank you very much for speaking. So my picture, of course, is very different to everyone else's, and it's based on what happened last year for COVID and what sadly is continuing this year for me and for a lot of people, for professional staff that work within clinical trials. So last year, COVID hit in March, and my world came to a halt. There was no going into the hospitals. There was no going into the clinics. There was no seeing patients. And my whole role with the Australian Parkinson's Mission as the National Director was to do online. So rather than going into sites and seeing them and talking to patients and talking to our advocacy groups through Parkinson's Australia or Shake It Up Australia, I had to do everything online. So I came home, which is where I am today still. And I had to talk to patients online. So I started to use programs which are normally for doctors, so I could talk to our patients that are part of our clinical trial and receive their feedback and issues that they were having with the design, issues that they might have been having with the sites, especially in COVID, because sites changed rapidly. We had sites in Victoria that closed down and there was no trials going on. So it's been a really interesting learning curve. And at the Brain and Mind Centre, which is where I was actually located at the University of Sydney, and also at Garvan Medical Research Institute in the city at St Vincent's Precinct. So basically my offices were closed, and that meant that I was not able to talk to anyone in that way. So those two locations basically shut down and became immediate staff only. So doctors and nurses could go in, patients requiring treatment, and that's it. So the discussions that I had to have, especially when I'm teaching sites or patients about certain things like how to take their blood pressure, utilising the blood pressure monitors that we provide, I had to do online. And so this photo shows me all dressed up in one of my clothes, one of my dresses for a presentation that I had to give, where I had to find something around the house that I could utilize to put a blood pressure monitor on, which literally was my daughter's doll. And I was using one of her play stethoscopes because I couldn't find mine, my medical bag site at this time when this photo was taken. And I was all gloved up, my glasses had been removed for the photo. But basically, that's how I did our training for the whole year. It's how I'm doing the training as of now. And I get all dressed up. I get my daughter's dolls. I get them ready, and we do the training programs for either heart monitor, ECGs, or blood pressure. And that's how I've been interacting with our patients, sites, and site staff. And the doctors find it highly amusing when I get online and I'm all done up. And they all ask about how many dolls we actually have in the house. This one is Rapunzel in the photo. So we do get a lot of talk about Ariel. She seems to be somewhat of a favourite because I think it's the red hair. Oh, and also she's a mermaid. She does have a skirt on. So for Christmas, we had to prepare a Christmas card. We do a Christmas card every year, and it goes around to all of our patients within our research group, which is 1,250 patients are registered in our research group for Parkinson's disease. Then we also have our clinic staff and our site staff, which goes to, and then our clinic patients who, of course, are coming to the clinic to receive standard of care rather than coming to do research. So altogether, the card goes to around 2,500 people. And this year they decided they wanted the card to be a little bit more fun and to show our lives at home for everyone like myself who is professional staff at home. And of course, some of the other photos, which I can't show you because there's too many people in it and I don't have permission, is that they were all done head to toe in hazmat gear, especially when they happened to be in the clinics around April. That's sort of how they were all decked out. So that went out to all of our patients. The feedback we received was that it was the best card. This card, last year's card, Christmas card, was the best card. We got so many cards back in return, which was really beautiful. Informing us that we did a great job and thank you very much and thank you for making it fun, because the experience really changed for our patients. Where normally they would see a team in the office, we make them a cup of teas and give them biscuits, and they're in our office for the whole day, usually about an 8-hour period to participate in the clinical trial program, and all of that was cut down. So they saw a doctor and a nurse, and it really changed the experience that they received. And it was hard for them as equally as it is hard for us, because we actually get great enjoyment of working with our patients. So Christmas card went out. The tree that you can see at the Banksia is actually in my garden. So I have 2 Banksias, they're out the front, and then I have one out the back of the house. And so I wanted to put that in there because when I'd be taking calls sometimes, especially last year, they'd be like, where are you? Walk us around. So, you know, I'd show them sort of where we are or what plants were out, and everyone seemed to love the Banksia. It seemed to be just like Ariel. The Banksia was the plant that everyone commented on. So that's my photo. And I suppose for me, it's just it's really, it just highlights our interaction and how things change and how we have to be really fluid in our workforce. And that means sometimes being at home and making Ariel and Pocahontas and all of the other Disney dolls work for us.
Thank you, Jackie. Very, very creative and very spontaneous in collecting props and using what you have at home to really connect with the patients. So wonderful. And you're doing some great work. In the interest of time, we do have to move on, but I know you're doing some great work in trials for Parkinson's disease.
I can do it in 1 minute. So basically,
we would love to hear.
So basically, the Australian Parkinson's mission is an innovative mission where we are combining clinical trials with genomics and biomarkers. So we are we're trying to follow the patients, assess their biomarkers for disease progression and also their reaction to the drugs that we're trialing. And on top of that, we're doing whole genome sequencing in the hope to be able to categorize what genes are interacting with what drugs. So in the future, we could produce a personalized treatment program. So a patient gets screened and then the relevant drugs that would react well with their type of Parkinson's disease is highlighted to them and their treating physician. And they're the drugs that they would trial first out of course, registered products as well as unregistered products. So more of a precision medicine approach. And lastly, of course, some of the stuff that I do with our patients is completely unrelated to products. And it's just to do with their everyday quality of life. And so we're cleaning the teeth, picking up coffee, and various other attributes that Parkinson's disease patients really find difficult.
Thanks, Jackie. That's wonderful. It's interesting, genomic testing and profiling to better target personalised therapies for patients is well and truly in the Parkinson's space, as it is in the oncology cancer space. So it's wonderful to hear those advances and again, targeted therapies for Parkinson's patients. Thank you for sharing your story. That's wonderful. Thank you. And last but not least, we're going to move on to hear Natalie Booth's story. Natalie, tell us about your image. If you take yourself off mute, thank you.
Yes. Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, thank you very, very much for having me. My story is a bit different to everybody else, that's for sure. So as you can see with my image there, wow. So, well, I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was about 11, 12 years old, and they did say that I would grow out of it. I had, adolescent epilepsy, and unfortunately, epilepsy is one of those things that isn't curable. It's never going to go away. And when you hear that as a teenager, a young teenager, you think, oh no, my life's over. That's it. It's, I'm different for the rest of my life. Anyways, I dealt with it, and I was lucky. When I was about 17, the medication I was taking at the time did, it did seem to work. I was able to get my driver's license. I was able to go to uni and study nursing. But then for some reason, when I was about 24 years old, my epilepsy came back, and it came back with a vengeance. And I lost everything. The only thing I was lucky to have at the time was my husband, and he was my rock. So I had to give up my nursing registration. I lost my license, obviously, and I was stuck in bed 24/7. I'd have up to 8 seizures a day, and they were tonic-clonic seizures. So once you have a seizure, you are out for hours. Like a seizure, one big tonic-clonic seizure is equivalent to running 4 kilometers flat out. So you are exhausted, and having 8 of them a day, you're gone. And my husband would obviously have to go to work, and all I had was my best friend, and that was the cat. And she would stay by my side. So my husband would come home some days, and I'd be laying on the bathroom floor because I didn't make it back. And this went on for maybe 3 or so years, until we rang my neurologist at the time and just said, look, there has to be something else. And I had tried every cocktail of medication. At this point, I was on, I think, 7 different anti-epileptics, which would be equal to 27 tablets morning and night, and it still wasn't helping. So I got admitted into St. Vincent's private hospital, and I was in there for 2.5 months. And they were going to originally remove my left temporal lobe, but 4 days before they were going to do that, they discovered that my seizures were coming from the other side of the brain. So my neurologist and neurosurgeon said, there's no point in doing that when the seizures will just travel to the other side and causing all this damage. So we're sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. Your road's ended, that's it. So hearing that, it's like, oh God, what do I do now? I had 2 options. I could go home and have full-time care, or I could be sent to the south of France and have deep brain stimulation. I didn't want either of them. So, I was at my lowest point. My husband was 3 hours from Melbourne, so we lived in regional Victoria. So I was just in a ball in bed, having seizures, still in hospital. And one day this man walked into my room, and it was the professor of neuroscience at St. Vincent's. And the only thing I can remember him saying to me was, you'll be seizure free, and you'll be the first in the world. And hearing those 2 things, I just thought, oh, okay, yep, I'll do it, fine. And the next thing I knew, I was signing paperwork, and I had rang Mum, and Mum's like, do you even know what it's going to do? I'm like, Mum, I don't care. He said that I'll be seizure free, I don't care. When a few days went past, and I realized what was going to happen. So they explained to me that I would have a pump inserted in my stomach. So it's about the size of the palm of your hand, and it's about 1 inch thick. And it would feed sodium valproate, which is Epilum, which I used to take orally. It would feed it directly into my brain, which would hopefully help, get to the source directly, instead of taking medication, which has to go through, your liver. It has to go through everything else first, which they're hoping would get to the source of it before going through everything else. A couple of issues, through the whole process was the pump originally wasn't designed for the medication. So, it would block up or it would erode through the time. And the trial was originally only for 1 year. But taking part in this trial has been the most amazing decision that was ever presented to me, even though it wasn't really a choice. It was just the last option I had. But I have now been seizure free for 2 years and 5 months.
Congratulations.
I have my license back. I have an absolutely amazing life now. My husband and I are in the process of building a house. I can get up every day. I don't have to have someone shower. My husband doesn't have to shower me. I can walk to the mailbox. I can do everything. And taking part in this trial, and even just having this trial offered to me, I still think back and think, wow, I must be the luckiest person in the world to have that man, think, oh, this woman needs this. I hope she takes it. And I think, well, what if I didn't? What if I was so silly and didn't? But I just hope that there are other people out there that, see that a medical trial isn't a scary thing. And that I remember, walking around the hospital when I was stuck in there thinking, oh, medical trials, they must do damage, they must hurt people. But I don't think there is enough education on what a medical trial can do. And I think people need to understand that it's not going to hurt you, that it can save your life. But I know that now, what I have been through in the past 5 years, that it would be a lovely thing to be able to, encourage people to try, and take part in medical trials, and also, help motivate people to stay positive. Like, as you can see with that image, my husband, when I was in hospital for many times, he bought me a singlet, and it had like an anchor, and it had a horrible skull on it, and it had "I refuse to sink," and I lived in that singlet. And then back in 2019, I just thought, no, if I did not stick by that, believing in that, I would have sunk, and I would have sunk all the way to the bottom. But now I have that permanently on my leg, and I live by that still. I still have my bad days, and I still go through my, bad moments. But I refuse to sink, and I'm never going to give up in any situation. And I will live through that for the rest of my life.
So wonderful, Natalie. So awesome. You do refuse to sink. You're actually swimming. You're swimming laps right now.
I am.
So thank you so much. It's such a moving story, and it's a real tattoo. So
it
reminds you of of where you've been, and look where you are now. So thank you so much. Just a quick question, because we are at time, but what was the hardest thing about being on that trial?
Honestly, the hardest part about that trial was having to shave all my head off, because obviously I had to have brain surgery for them to get the catheter into my head. I had hair down to my waist, and the 3 days before surgery, my neurosurgeon came in, and he was like, oh, we need you to shave all your hair off. And that was the most horrible thing. I think I would have been 26 years old, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'd rather stay like this. I don't want to shave my head. But now, looking back, it didn't matter. Sorry, I'm trying to fight my cat off. He's just I'm trying to fight the cat off. But no, but even going through the trial, it was quite amazing, because the next minute I had the Herald Sun coming and wanting to interview me, and I was on the front page of the Herald Sun. I helped the St. Vincent's Foundation as well, but you know, I would love to try and encourage more people and, you know, become kind of a motivational speaker to help them to encourage people that, you know, you can't give up. Yes, it does get hard, but, you know, you can't give up. It's not worth it.
Thank you, Natalie. We look forward to hearing more from you about you out there through the community. The White Coats Foundation is behind you, and we'll do everything to support you.
Oh, thank you.
And to continue to share your voice and your inspirational story.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalie.
I was going to say thank you, Natalie, too, for sharing your story. I don't think there was a dry eye on the panel. Coming through on everyone just, you know, rooting for you and thinking, yay, what a wonderful outcome. So thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story.
Oh, no, thank you very much for having me.
Fiona, could you advance to the next screen? We are a little bit over time, but what we do want to do is thank you to all our storytellers today. Thank you to all our wonderful community that put through a submission. We had some wonderful submissions. Please visit our website, our gallery, online gallery, where the images are there with some wonderful, insightful, creative stories. Please visit our website. And also, I would like to, I can't see the screen anymore for some reason, apologies. But if you could advance the screen again, Fiona, I'd like to make a special thank you to Boehringer Ingelheim, who sponsored our event today. And without people like Boehringer and others in the community supporting us, we can't do the work that we do today. We can't continue creating awareness of clinical trials and the importance of clinical trials in the community. So thank you, Boehringer, and stay tuned. White Coats Foundation is putting together some donation packages for sponsors in the community to continue supporting the great work that we do in the community. So stay tuned for more information on that.
Sorry, Michelle, before we wrap it up too, I was just going to say, could we fit in the poll for anyone that might have time before they sign off?
Oh, that's a good idea. That would be great. I did forget the poll, didn't I?
That's okay.
Apologies. Okay, so if we could quickly, I'm going to start the poll. So please tell us who you are. Where would you currently go to access clinical trial information? And what would be your preference for receiving current clinical trial information? Give everybody a few moments.
I don't think the panelists are able to vote on this, so just in case wondering.
Okay, I'm going to end the polling now and let's take a look at the results. So the majority of the people in our audience today, 62% were from the biopharmaceutical industry. Thank you for coming along. We had 15% healthcare professionals, 8% of carers, and 15% of others in the community. Thank you for letting us know. Also, where would you currently go to access clinical trial information? So the majority of our community would go to the Australian Clinical Trials Government website, and others there have been mentioned as well. And thirdly, what would be your preference for receiving current clinical trial information? At 31%, we have both the specialist and the Australian Clinical Trials Government website tied for the first place that people go, which is very interesting. Followed shortly by GP and also by patient advocacy support groups, which didn't rate in the second question about where people currently go. So that's an interesting statistic for us and something that we can work on as a White Coats Foundation.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. And once again, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Please hit us up on our socials. We do have our hashtags that are on the last slide. And happy International Clinical Trials Day. Enjoy your day. Give yourself a pat on the back for everything that you do to support clinical trials and research. Thank you, everyone.